The hour of 6 p.m. has arrived, and I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual for a second time until everyone has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. We have nobody remotely in, so we're ready to take our agenda. Item 1 is a report out, business, downtown business and employee parking.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the committee members. I am Chelsea North. I'm the Parking Operations Manager. At the FOP meeting on November 14th of 2024, several downtown business owners voiced their concerns and frustrations about parking and downtown safety. On December 9th, several members of city staff from the city manager's office, parking services, and public works met with Jada Carland and Casey Meyer-Rose to address the concerns posed to the committee. We discussed safety in the Wells Garage structure. The garage is monitored by surveillance cameras and also has upgraded LED lighting that was installed within the last few years. Police also patrol downtown during the evening and overnight hours to increase public safety, and a request for more cameras was referred to the Public Works Department for further evaluation. We also discussed alternative parking options closer to Central Square, Ben Gilbo Avenue lots and Elm Street lot. Roxbury Plaza is available to the public during the day and evening, and the City Hall upper deck is available for use outside of the hours reserved by quarterly permits. And we pointed out these areas specifically because it seems like it's lesser known that those parking areas are available. Parking is used by visitors, workers of various industries, students, and residents, and balancing the interests of these customers can be a difficult task. Parking Services offers 2 to 3 hour parking on street and up to 10 hours of parking in long-term lots. Time limits, especially in the high-demand 2-hour zones, are in place to promote turnover and allow the diverse customer base equitable access to various businesses. Areas with on-street pay stations also allow a customer to park for 15 minutes for free to enable each space to be a loading zone for quick trips into a business. Additionally, we offer quarterly permit program. We have a quarterly permit program that is generally less expensive per week and per day than other towns and municipalities. I have provided a table in the memo with the breakdown of costs in several New Hampshire cities. And with that overview of the memo, I'd like to open for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Have additional?
Oh, just to also just clarify, this item what was referred to staff, but in your motion you did ask for a report back, which is why we're here tonight, because we are tracking in the civic system when something is to come back. And so Chelsea is reporting out our conversation. We did have a good conversation. We did point out those additional parking lots that are available close by at lower cost, and we haven't had any other complaints or concerns since then.
Okay, comments, questions up here? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't love the response. Because what I'm reading, and I appreciate that it is very informative of what's going on, was, so they came to us in November with a concern around it. We're responding with, we're not changing anything, it's fine. I don't love that. The fact that it's available at after 6:30 behind here, everyone who's working in downtown restaurants is already at work by then. That doesn't help with that, right? They're all at work by 3 or 4. I don't love the response, that it's basically like, it's fine, it's not a problem, don't worry about it. I get that it's informational, but that's my feedback on what the informational is, so.
Members of the public?
Move to accept as informational.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2, development.
Good evening, Dan Langell, City Assessor. With me tonight, most of you probably know Bill Hutlicker. He's a Realtor for Masiello. And so we're going to talk to you tonight about some exciting future development opportunities in our Blackbrook TIF district. Before we go down there, I just want to provide a little bit of background exactly on what a TIF is, how it works, and go over a little bit of the history of the Blackbrook TIF. So you'll hear me say TIF a lot, and it's a lot shorter than saying tax or increment financing district a number of times. So there's a provision in state law, RSA 162K, that allows municipalities to designate development and revitalization districts. These districts are formed because really there's a requirement for there to be like a public and private partnership. In order for there to be development, that the city or municipality then has to maybe provide roads, expand water sewer lines, stuff like that. So as part of this district, a development plan and a finance plan are required. The development plan simply states the goals and objectives of the district. The finance plan maps out how these municipal bonds or costs that are associated with the development are paid for. So how it works is, once this district is set, the city sets the original value of that area. So there may be several parcels, and the city says this area is worth $10 million. At that point, the city needs to maybe spend $4 million in order to increase the water and sewer lines, develop roads, improve infrastructure, stuff like that. So instead of the general fund picking up the cost of paying for these developments, what it is, we use the increment that's in that district. So if you started off at $10 million, with all the new development, it's now worth $40 million. That $30 million is then used to help pay off those bonds, those costs, all that increment. If there's money above and beyond what's needed, that money just goes to the general fund, which is the case in some of our current TIF districts. So the city's actually been very successful in creating TIFs. We have 2. One that most people are more well aware of because it's the most current one is our downtown Well Street TIF. This incorporates a lot of the downtown area, the Railroad Square. The Well Street parking deck was built as a result of this. All of Railroad Square was developed as part of this TIF district. And when it originally started back in 2012, it was worth $47 million. Today it's worth over $110 million. And that's just the taxable portion. Obviously, there's a lot of exempt property there as well. The second one is the Blackbrook TIF. This was the first one the city ever incorporated back in 1996. The original value when it started back then was $12.5 million. Today it's over $70 million in value. All the debt currently is paid off for that TIF, so there's no longer any bonds or any outstanding debt associated with it. So I did include a map in the packet. This is the Blackbrook TIF district that we're referring to tonight. It is about 427 acres. When it started, it was largely undeveloped, and really it was a result of a lot of interest from industrial properties looking to develop there. We're looking into diversifying the city's economic base, bringing new jobs. So at the time, the city agreed to spend $4 million to improve intersections and roads, bring in water sewer lines, and all the costs associated with all that development that the city put in was paid for with that $4 million appropriation. So again, that's all paid for today, but the district is still active. And we see businesses such as Presitech, Janos Technology, the Cheshire Medical Center, their new building on Maple Ave, that's actually part of this district, part of Covenant Living. Now, some of these properties are tax exempt, but we still get payment in lieu of taxes, so there's still a significant amount of investment and money coming in from this district. Soon Douglas Toy, I hear, will be building a new building off of Blackbrook Road. But also part of this district is the parcel that's formerly owned by Smith Medical Center. This is the larger parcel, now kind of the lower right-hand corner of that map. It's about a 135-acre site. The building there is about 150,000 square feet or so, and it uses about 20 acres in that area. But with it being vacant, now there's an opportunity because it's now up for sale. And that's where we bring in our good friend Bill here to explain some of the conversations he's been having as a seller of that property.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the introduction. The property, when we first took the listing, was, as Dan mentioned, 135 acres. We're not exactly sure how many acres are developable. We did ask to the owners to do a survey that would delineate wetlands to give us a better perspective. They chose not to. We also talked to them about potentially condominiumizing the property, which would allow the building with the 20 acres to be sold on its own, leaving the remainder of the acreage to be sold separately. They also decided that wasn't the route they wanted to go. So the big challenge has been finding a developer who would have use for the building as well as the land. And as we know, we don't have a lot of large manufacturers moving into the area, Cheshire County in general, not specific to Keene, but just in general. So most of the activity has been from people looking at it from the perspective of developing housing. And we have two primary developers that are looking at it from that perspective. One would keep the building, one would demo the building. But the issue then becomes infrastructure in either case, and that's where, when Dan and I got together to discuss it, it was apparent from both parties that they would need help with regard to infrastructure. So some of it's timing, and some of it is acceptance on the part of the city. And based on what Dan said, you've clearly had success with TIF districts. In Swansea, we're about to close out our first one. So we too can give testament that they do work and they do provide infrastructure for development. In the series that we have now, the ownership is prepared and hopeful to be out of the property by the end of the year, and obviously they'd like to be done with the property by the end of the year. So both developers, in looking at the project, understand that they're on a tight timeline. And I'm very excited to tell you that your fourth floor has been extraordinarily supportive of housing. Both Evan and Mary have been terrific to work with. They've met with, one of the developers met with Evan today, I believe, or talked on the phone. But both have been effusive in their energy with regard to trying to make this happen. Both developers are very aware of and very appreciative of the College Court initiative that you brought in last year, and both would utilize that. It's also helpful to know that when you look at the map that Dan provided to you, if you look to the east towards downtown, you'll see that there are a couple of access points from Maple Acres that clearly indicate that when that development was conceived, that the city anticipated, or the developer did, continuing that development onto this property. And if you look at Apollo Drive, you can see that it runs in a north-south direction directly parallel to the property. So there's at least 3 access points from Maple Acres, as well as coming in off of Bowman Drive. And we would have to, as I mentioned earlier, kind of minimize the property. But for both developers, it would be helpful to know that the city is supportive and will help with regard to the infrastructure, and that's where the TIF would come in. So I appreciate Dan bringing us together tonight, because this is early in the process, and we're looking at a 4 to 6 month due diligence period. Just knowing the fact that Dan is supportive, hopefully you'll be supportive, and the support that we have on the 4th floor, that this is really Keene at its finest. It's not the Keene I knew 15 years ago. This is a different Keene, and I'm hopeful that you'll be supportive of the effort that your colleagues are making.
If I could
Thank
just
you.
clarify the process going forward. We're not asking the finance committee or the city council to make any decisions tonight as far as this is the finance plan. We're not allocating any kind of funding at this time. We're really looking for support. If any development plans are, actually developed, then we'll have a public hearing, so the public will still have input onto the process. We'll bring back the plans to the finance committee. They'll go over them in detail. And then obviously the city council will be voting on them before anything gets put into place.
Go ahead.
So I guess what I'm unclear on is what we're actually voting on then, that's what we are authorizing, I guess.
You are, if you approve this motion, you're authorizing me to begin negotiations with the 2 developers in terms of what sort of infrastructure they may need and what that would require for a financing plan. So it's difficult for us to come with any numbers because we don't know what those plans are. And I did not want to begin any conversations with any developers about a potential TIF district and financing plan until I knew the council was supportive of that. So basically, it just gives me the authorization to have those conversations.
Just a follow-on on that. So the part that confused me with this is the fact that there is an existing Blackbrook
Yep.
corporate, and is this using the
Yep.
sime footprint, and it's just authorizing a new development within that same footprint?
So it's potentially doing 2 things. There is an existing TIF district there, but we would look at whether or not it made sense at the same time we brought forward a financing plan to expand the district. So we will look at that. But regardless, even if we weren't expanding the district, we would need to go through a public process to create a financing plan that was related to the development.
Because the map we're looking at is the existing district.
Correct.
There might be other,
Correct.
okay, got it.
Yep.
That was my question, so.
Thank you. I like the TIF district concept. I like the one that we did downtown. I like the one that you're proposing now. And it's really beneficial. It could be welcoming, whether it's housing or things like that. You're taking an existing building that we don't want to be like the Kingsbury building and just sit there for years and years and deteriorate in value. And I would wholeheartedly support this. But I would have told you if you came back like the first TIF district for this, there'd be no way in the world that I would support that because that had a bunch of shenanigans in it. And I think this one is you bringing to us this way and explaining, I think it's a totally positive, and I trust both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
But just one more question.
Sure.
We'll clarify. Douglas Toy is going into the existing area, right?
That's my understanding, in the Blackbrook. Yeah. The recently purchased parcel will be
Yeah.
developing in the next
Okay.
several months.
All right. Very good. Motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to negotiate a development plan and a tax increment financing plan regarding parcels in the Blackbrook Corporate Park Tax Increment Financing District. As part of any plans, the city manager may explore whether it is beneficial to enlarge the area of the development district to include additional parcels.
Second.
Moved and then seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Swansea connections. Sorry.
There's a vacancy with him.
Yes, I understand there is a vacancy in Swansea.
Do it all over again.
Good evening. Assistant City Manager, Human Resources Director Beth Fox. I am here asking that the manager be authorized to solicit donations and accept items to support fundraising and other activities related to employee events, accept and expend cash donations, and accept and expend funds raised through fundraising activities, including raffles conducted pursuant to state law, to support employee events. I think, as many of you know, a number of our employee events are supported through fundraising activities. Those include the holiday luncheon, the health fair when we've had it, community night, and those donations are what make these events or augment the events possible. Recently, we were talking about fundraising for next year's, or actually it's this year's now, the 2025 holiday luncheon. And the committee was kicking around an idea to do a more extensive raffle, which regretfully resulted us in querying the former city attorney for his opinion about the impact of the city handbook policy that prohibited gambling. And he provided us with an opinion that he felt that probably 50-50 raffles, which we have done for many years, on small amounts, were not entirely appropriate. Having talked about that, under that language, I should say, they are permitted under state law, but were not permitted under the language in our handbook. After a discussion of that, we decided to author an amendment to the handbook that specifically authorizes these raffles for those purposes to occur on city premises. And a procedure and they'll be the proceeds of those raffles will be incorporated into the procedures that we use to report out our donations to the city council. Because in this particular case, we're talking about a larger raffle, we had discussions with finance because it may very well, sounds like it will implicate some tax reporting requirements. They've agreed to do that. And this action before you tonight is just to sort of confirm that authority and we'll move this forward in the practice that we have, but maybe on a slightly larger scale. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee, and we hope you support it, because without these efforts to fundraise, we would not be able to sponsor and have these events for our employees at the scale that we do today.
Thank you. Questions up here? Members of the public? Absolutely.
So it's really the size of the raffle that got us concerned, because they wanted to give away a sizable amount at the end of the raffle. They're looking at up to $3,000 as the cash prize. But I want to give credit to the committee that works on this every year, because they sell poinsettias for $5. They do a variety of things to scrape together the funds necessary to buy the food that's provided at that holiday luncheon. And it is quite expensive. And without them, I would be coming to you to look for support as part of the budget to be able to support that, because it's an important event every year. The employees really appreciate it. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to the committee for thinking of a new way to raise more money to continue to be able to support that and other events.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, like a process question. So who's going to be running the raffles? Is it the city itself, or is it the individuals as private citizens? And then is the money then flowing back to the city? So just curious.
Yeah,
about that.
sure. So it is a committee of the city that would be running the raffle. And the money that's collected would be accepted through your donation policy, which is usually done at city council meeting. It's just a vote to accept and expend the funds. There's a process because we really want to limit the number of these types of raffles that occur and make sure that they're appropriate. So there's a process for them to apply to me to show why we need to do this and how it's tied to the city's functions. So we don't anticipate that there will be a bunch of raffles. So we have, Beth has done a great job at putting some language together that we are at the same time inserting into the personnel policy, should you approve this.
Public comments? Motion, please.
Move to recommend the city manager be authorized to solicit and accept items donated to support fundraising and other activities related to employee events, accept and expend cash donations, and accept and expend funds raised through fundraising activities, including raffles conducted pursuant to RSA 287A in support of such events.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. When we have tickets, feel free to buy one.
Uh-huh.
Or two.
Mr. Airport.
Good evening, everyone. Dave Hickling, Airport Director. So I have, Airport has two agenda items on, both dealing with engineering agreements. First one is for our Airport Wildlife Perimeter Fence Project. We were able to do, or just wrapping up the environmental assessment that we've done this last year. We're going to move on to the next phase, which would be doing the design of the project, the permitting, and the bidding portion of it. So to do that, we'll be needing to work with an engineering firm. McFarland Johnson is engineer of record for the airport. We'd like to work with them on this and do an agreement with them. So this project will be funded, this is a funding source we hadn't used in the past, but it's a bipartisan infrastructure bill, airport infrastructure grant program. Works a lot like the AIP program. It'll be 90% of it will be paid under that grant, 5% under the state, and then 5% will be the city's cost for this project.
Thank you. Comments, questions up here? Seeing none, members of the public? Seeing none. A motion, please.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute an agreement with McFarland Johnson Incorporated for engineer service associated with the Airport Wildlife Management Fence Project 05J0004B for an amount not to exceed $325,000.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further comments, committee? Yes, sir.
We see it's number $325,000, but
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
only paying $16,250. The total project is $325,000.
Great.
For the public's interest, we, the Keene, are only paying $16,250 of this $325,000.
That's correct.
All in favor? Anybody opposed? Unanimous. And
Right.
your next one.
So the next one is similar. This is a project we've been hearing about for quite a while, the Taxiway Alpha project. That was multi-phase, multi-year project. The first phase was the extension of Taxiway Alpha, which was completed in 2022. The second phase, which is the reconstruction of the existing taxiway, has been ongoing. We've bid this twice already. We've had problems with getting the funding in a timely manner from the federal government and through the state process in order to award the grant to the winning bidder. So this will be our third attempt at bidding this project. So we'll be working with McFarland Johnson this time, and they will be doing the construction administration of the project, which includes the resident engineer and the grant administration. So this agreement would be covering that portion, or that part of this project. Similar to the previous project, except this will be FAA AIP grant money, which will cover 90% of the cost. 5% of the cost will be New Hampshire DOT grant, and then again, 5% will be the city cost.
Questions here? Members of the public? Motion.
Move to recommend. Thank you. Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute an agreement with McFarland Johnson, Inc. for construction administration of the taxiway A reconstruction project 05J0004B for an amount not to exceed $308,300.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion up here? Seeing none. All in favor? No one's opposed. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Sir. All right, our next item has been referred back to us. And here we are. Mary's gonna join us, maybe?
Hi, thank you. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So for this item, I know you already have a lot of background information, but just to quickly review I know this is a large topic, but essentially there's two major parts to this recommendation that's coming to you from the Energy and Climate Committee and staff. One recommendation pertains to the next bid for the Community Power Program, and the other recommendation pertains to the plan. So I'll talk about the bid recommendation first. For this next round of Community Power, the Energy and Climate Committee spent 2 months, so January and February, hearing from our current consultants and just looking at the data for the program and what the participation levels had been for the first round. Our first round had 4 products, including the default, which has 35% renewable energy, which is 10% more than the state minimum, so 10% extra renewable energy. We also have a basic option that's a little bit cheaper that has the bare minimum amount of renewable energy, but someone would have to intentionally choose that option. It's not an automatic. And then there's 2 options where you can increase the amount of renewable energy and pay a little bit extra for that. So that's what we currently have in our program. Looking at the data, which I know you have the slides in your packet from the last time that I presented to you, so I don't have all the numbers right in front of me. But essentially, what the data shows is that the vast majority of program participants stayed with the defaults. We did have a good amount, I think it was somewhere around like 4%, choose to opt down to that cheaper option. We had maybe between 2 and 3% go up to the 100% option, and less than 1% go to the 50% option. So looking at that data, the Energy and Climate Committee is recommending to go down to 3 options instead of 4, and increase the amount of renewable energy in the default product as a way to move towards our community's goals to transition to 100% renewable energy. And then the final piece, which I think was what was most controversial or confusing last time, was this idea of building up a discretionary reserve fund using what we've been calling an adder fee, but in the plan it's referred to as a rate component. That is, what that would do is it would put a small component of the rate would be going to build up this fund that could then be used for local projects. And so the Energy and Climate Committee was recommending that that be about 1/10 cent per kilowatt hour, and that it be added to the default product and the 100% product, but not the basic. Now, so that was all the recommendations for the bid. Because the bid recommendation included that adder fee in it, we would, if the council wants to move forward with that adder fee, we would need to amend the plan to explicitly state that we have the authority to collect that adder fee to build the discretionary reserve fund. putting it in the plan doesn't mean that it has to be included in the product. So regardless of whether or not you decide this round that you want to include the adder fee, we as staff still recommend that you update the plan to give yourselves the option to do that in the future if you so choose. It would have to be decided by city council, no matter what. So if you put it in the plan now, it doesn't mean that we're going to include it in the bid now. We could, but the plan just enables it. And then, yeah, I'll stop there. So I do want to just say, in terms of cost, I think it's helpful to think about the impact of the fee and the impact of the extra renewable energy content kind of, and try to do it as much as apples to apples as you can. So the adder fee, again, the recommendation is about 1/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour. According to our consultants, each additional 5% of extra renewable energy equates to about 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour. So as you're deciding what amount of renewable energy to include in the default, that might be helpful for you to think about. So the Energy and Climate Committee is recommending to include 25% extra renewable energy, which is 50% total and 15% more than what we have now. And the reason for that recommendation is, again, by 2030, the goal is to be at 100% renewable. And so using, rough estimation, that would equate to about $80 more per year for an average household. Yep.
So, what I think I heard, because the benefit I had was I actually wasn't in the meeting at council, so I get to watch the whole thing online, was concern around costs that everyone's incurring right now just in the world, right? And it was not just, it was not about the specific requirements of the energy plan, it was that everything's getting more expensive right now and they're very hesitant to increase prices knowingly to residents of Keene, because it's $80 a year. Over the course, it's, doesn't add up to much per month, it's not much per bill, but it adds up, right? And on top of everything else, and eggs being $10 and all the different pieces, right? So that was what I think I heard out of that concern. So I think no matter what comes out of committee tonight, there's gonna be debate at council. And I think one of the best ways we can do this is structured in a way that we give ourselves clear options at council. I think the easiest way to do that is to leave ourselves with the original 4 options for the percentages, including the one we have today. And I think what that sets us up to do is at council, we debate which one's the default when we get to council. Is that if we set the default at 50 or we set the default at 35, that's the debate, as opposed to trying to change the number on the fly at the meeting. Because if we leave all 4 as options coming out of here instead of going down to just 3, it makes it easier for us to amend it on the floor from 50 to 35 or from 35 to 50, whatever comes out of here. And I think that might be an easier way to present it to the council, just talking specifically to the first motion. For the second motion, I think the right answer is to give ourselves I guess it's really the third, but to give ourselves the option to put in a fee. I personally, as I was in the original meeting, I'm not a fan of putting in the fee. But I think there's no harm in giving ourselves the option in the future. Why not document that? But I think the change I would have from what our original motion going forward would be to have the 25, the basic, the 35 that we have today, the 50, the 100, still all available to set us up for an easier debate at council, because I don't think what we decide tonight's not going to be discussed at council, just realistically.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to point out the rules will contemplate you making a recommendation that
Yes.
they can either adopt or not adopt. And probably the best thing for them with the rules, unless they suspend it, is you have a recommendation, then they amend it to pick one.
Yep.
So just, okay.
Totally aligned that we should come out of here with, between the 5 of us, I don't know if we're going to come out with 50 or 35 or whatever that number will be, but we're going to come out with 1. And the council can move to amend that, and then we can debate it on the floor. I think that's probably the easiest way for this to go forward. Just, 'cause we can pick a number, we could spend the next hour debating what the right number is. I know Councilor Lake and I don't agree on what the number should be necessarily. That's okay. It'll be decided by 15, not by 5. So, just a thought.
I'll let Woody goes first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a bit of contention on at least the second part of the motion at council, and I figure that's probably where we were going to spend a bit of our time here. And I will have a question for the city planner in the city, but I do in fact disagree with the idea of potentially lowering what our base plan is. One of the ideas that we had around having just the 3 tiers was to simplify the program so that when we're going out, it's not, you've got this plan and this plan and this plan. It's, we're going to start you in the middle, and you can either opt up if you want to be more aggressive with how much clean energy you're going after, or to opt down to get to the most competitive price. So I really think that we should come up with 3 numbers rather than 4, even if we end up changing that 50. I think having 3 is good from a consumer standpoint of simplicity and trying to make sure we understand what the plan is. So one question that I did just want to pose, either to the city planner or otherwise, there was some discussion around the cost incurred for the plan, like the adder fee, on administrative costs and actually carrying out the program. I know we didn't explicitly talk about it at the last FOP meeting, so wondering if you could just expand more on what those costs may be. Like what would the city incur for us actually trying to carry out this program?
Right, so there would be no direct cost to the city. Everything for this program is paid through another rate component that goes directly to our consultants. That's 1/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour. So if you'll recall, Standard Power and Good Energy are our consultants, and that fee is collected, and then they get paid out of that fee directly by our supplier. And they, between those consultants and our supplier, they do all of the administration. So as from the city's standpoint, any money collected through that fee would simply be given to us to put into an account. We already have an account created, the city manager created an account, which I believe has about $75,000 in it right now. So it's already been seeded with some money. And then the only other cost to the city would be, depending on what you all decide to do with that money, there may be some costs associated with like advertising the program, or and it depends on how you decide to use the money. It could be used for a match for a grant. It could be, so what it's used for will drive what the costs are of the program, if there is a program that gets created.
I will just add that that was the response that we received when we said whether or not we should just do the adder fee to the 100%. The response that I received was that it was going to be such a small amount, the administrative burden would not be worth it, because it would just be maybe approximately over between $1,000 and $1,500. And while they say we're not going to pay for it, I think we always pay for it in our bidding. It's how we structure our bid, and the things that we do in that bid influence the pricing. And so the other recommendation from them was to go to 3 instead of 4 options, to simplify, and also hopefully to drive maybe some of the 50% people to the 100% option. So I did want to clarify that. There's no direct cost, but I do believe every decision we make related to the bid does influence the overall costs.
I like the fact that we're looking at putting the ability to put it in, which then, based on the economic climate that's going, yes, some years you put it in, some years you take it out. Like, for example, with the stock market, a lot of people who are retired 401s have been kind of smashed. We may just say, you know what, this is not the right year to take $50 or $60 more. But when the economy's good, we can say, yes, we can do that, and it doesn't come as a surprise to the ratepayers. Second, I like the three options. I would support the three options because basically, if I want to be, oh, I don't want to, just give it to me, and I will know exactly what just give it to me means. And then I can then make my mind, you know what? This is costing me too much, or this is, I want to go here. I want to go to the higher one. Because even if you get to 50% this year, that only leaves you 5 years at 10% increase each year to get to the goal. And right now, this is going to leave us really tight to be able to get to our 2030 goal. And there were too many options. We're not never going to get there.
So how long ago did we, as a city, come up with these goals?
Yeah, so the 100% renewable energy goals were adopted in 2019, I believe. And then City Council again adopted a plan in early, I believe it was January of 2021. You adopted the Sustainable Energy Plan, which was a plan that was developed by staff with a lot of input and help from the Energy and Climate Committee that laid out sort of pathways to get to those goals. And the top implementation strategy from that plan was community power. Then we went through another planning process with community power. I believe the community power plan, like all of the public outreach that we did for that was during COVID. And I want to say it was mostly like 2021, maybe 2020. My memory is a little hazy. But so we did do another round of planning and outreach for the development of the community power plan, and then that was adopted, approved by the PUC and adopted again by City Council in 2022. Yes, and then we launched in 2023, in June of 2023. Yep.
May I follow up? So a couple of things. I agree with Councilor Remy about leaving the 4 and then having discussion at the council level, because I also agree that there's going to be a lot of discussion. And I'm actually in favor of leaving it at the 4 because of the times we're living in right now. And I also would challenge the council and the staff to consider moving the goalpost from 2030 and pushing it out because of what's going on a national level and even on a world level at the moment. But at this level, at this meeting, I would recommend just leaving the 4 and then having a broader discussion at the full council.
Members of the public? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob Favelis, Main Street. I want to just associate myself with both Councilor Remy and Councilor Chadbourne's comments about keeping the 4 options. It's what the council knows right now for the existing structure. It's also what the community knows for the structure. It does give us maximum flexibility as a council at our next meeting to decide what that default rate should be. It also, I think, if we keep the 4 options, it gives our constituents maximum flexibility to stay in the community power plan, which is ultimately the goal, and but to choose a tier that makes the most sense for their budget. I also want to make kind of 2 additional comments. First of all, I don't think that I see a path forward through full council for this adder fee for a number of reasons. I think keeping it on the default is probably a non-starter council for reasons that some of us brought up at the last meeting, and the more I have learned about what the kind of administrative management cost of this would be to impose it just on the higher tiers or the opt-in higher tiers, I think is probably untenable at this point as well, unless the fee were so substantial as to probably turn people off from opting up anyway. The other piece is that as we talk about the goals of the 2019 plan and anything that kind of came after that, I think it's really important to remember that we can't get to the 100% renewable goal in 2030 no matter what it's going to cost our residents and our ratepayers and our taxpayers. And so I understand, the function of the Energy and Climate Committee on advising the council on green energy and clean energy and climate projects, and they do a good job of it, and it's the specific area. As a council, we have to consider a number of different competing priorities, and certainly one of those pieces is a clean environment, clean energy, and moving towards our goals. But another piece, and for me, frankly, the bigger piece, is making sure that we have people who can afford to live in Keene to take advantage of all these clean energy goals and initiatives that we're moving towards. So I look forward to what I'm sure will be a robust discussion at council. I see that I'm the only counselor here in the audience, but I know I'm not the only counselor who's not here with opinions on this. So I expect we'll have a discussion. I would like to see us be able to choose between 4 options for what we want as the default, and I would like for the public to be able to choose between 4 options so that they can pick the plan that best fits their budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my position is I'd like to accomplish everything we want to do, but I know we're in a time period that, it's probably not going to happen. Seems, in the beginning, it seemed quite a good avenue to take to cut it down to just 3 options and make it simple for me. But, given the way things have changed just over a couple of weeks, probably leave it alone. Yeah, true. And keeping in mind our goal, we some of us were on the council at the time that happened, was a good objective. And it was probably an objective, if all things were equal, we'd get very close to. But again, times have changed so much that we might have to admit that we have a goal and we may not make it for other reasons. And putting the adder, well, for some of us it might not hurt much, it's not a lot. It'll probably hurt many others. And people will just take different selections because of some of that. Again, many of the things that influence it, we don't have any control over, but perhaps the best avenue for us to go in the next couple of weeks as we deal with this is to simplify it and get it coming forward. Yes, sir.
As a means of compromise with the folks that don't want to go to 4, but also want to go up in the rate, I would be willing to vote as part of my recommendation to go to 4, but to have 50 be the default rate coming out of this committee, and we can debate it there. And I may not vote for it to be 50 when we get to the full council, but to have the recommendation that we have to go against be that. So that it needs to be an amendment to drop it back to 35, as opposed to an amendment to bring it up to 50. So I'm willing to propose it that way as a motion, if that's like a compromise option. And if we want to, as I said, I may vote at council to move it to 35 if that amendment comes forward, but I think as a starting point, it gives us something to react to and give the council something to react to, forces more conversation than just status quo.
I just want to clarify one thing. I don't want to confuse it, but the number can be anything. It could be 40%.
I want to stay away
Okay,
from
all right.
43.7%.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew
Yes.
that it could be a different number. Okay.
And I completely understand that, and I think if we get into nitpicking 43 versus 44%, we could be there for a very long time. So, I would, if you're okay with a motion attempt, I don't know unless you want, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Both of us had our hands, so,
I didn't see
yeah.
it.
That's okay. I won't support that, the making the 50. And I appreciate what you're doing. I just won't support it. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a very reasonable compromise. I definitely got the air from the council that the adder fee was not the way forward, and I completely understand that. And so I think it's fair for us to leave that piece out. I do think that until the council comes together to reset these goals, right? These are the council's goals and the council's community power plan that wants us to get to 100. Until we decide to go away from the goals, I do think we need to move to 100. So I would support us keeping, if Councilor Remy ends up making the motion, to stick with the 4 plans, have the default be the 50 with no adder fee. I would support that motion.
Yes, sir.
This is where I get myself in trouble. The part that I'm hearing, and the other councilman brought it up, he's the only one here, and we're talking about what can we make it easier for the council to come up with a decision. But we're not supposed to make it easy for the council to come up with a decision. We're supposed to come up, we think, is the best decision, and then the council has to fight on the floor and justify that one. The unfortunate part, we're here at the committee, anybody who wanted to come here had the ability to speak. Once we're at the council, no one's going to be able to put any extra input in, and so we're going to be based on what we heard here in anything another council person brings up. And I can support going without the adder fee. I have no problem with that. I just don't like coming up with a compromise because we think it's going to make it easier on the city council members when they have the discussion.
I know that there were a few counselors that wanted to be here tonight and had other commitments prior to this agenda item. So, and I know that there are several counselors, because I talked to them, and they tell me that they watched the meeting and that they, have opinions and talk to me in advance before I come here. So when I'm echoing some of those other counselors' concerns and opinions. So I wouldn't discount the fact that they aren't here. And I don't know about making it easy or not easy. I guess I'll stay out of that one.
I just want to clarify, this was a referral back to us based on feedback from another meeting. So when I'm saying that I want to represent what they are asking for, it's based on it literally went there. They didn't like it. They made us vote on it again. So I'm trying to take that into consideration as we're going forward with it. It's not just, I get the point that we're not here to make it easy for them, but this happened throughout the process when we were doing the downtown project where it's like, hey, you guys heard our feedback. Hopefully the motions coming out of here are aligned with the feedback of the full council. If they're not, we're gonna have a much harder time at council. So it's not uncommon that we do it that. For this one, I'm trying to take the feedback that we heard at that. I'm going to try to state a motion and then we can respond to it. And because I don't know if there's any more public comment, but I got a head nod no. So I'll take a stab at it and we can respond to that as opposed to. So I would move that the Finance Committee recommends the next community, or I would move that the next community power plan electricity options have 4 levels. These levels would include the Keene Basic at an elective option with the minimum renewable energy content required by the state of New Hampshire, the Keene Green Local with 35% renewable energy, the Keene 50 as the default option, and Keene 100 as an elective with 50% renewable energy, and the Keene 100 as an elective option with 100% total renewable energy.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Further discussion up here? All right,
I missed it. What was the default?
50.
50. Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to echo some of what Councilor Remy was saying, is I do think that, we're not trying to make this easier for the council. This is a compromise between what the ECC was suggesting, what FOP had brought, and then the feedback that we got from the rest of the council of the adder fee doesn't seem to be the financial avenue that we want to take on this. But we did, with some later apprehension to it, we did vote to go for the 50 as the default. So I do think sending this back to the council in that manner, and if the council wants to change that on the floor, then so be it. But I think this is a good compromise to at least bring to the council in this form.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? 3, 4, against? 2, 3 to 2. Are we right back where we were?
For the opposite reason.
All right. So, the next step is,
If I can.
yes,
So, thanks, sir. So I'm recommending that we just ignore motion 2 because we're not in favor of doing an adder fee right now, it sounds like. So unless somebody wants to jump in and make one, I'm not gonna make that motion. Okay? But I would, just to give us something to respond to, move that the community power plan with amendments shown in, that the community power plan, allow for the potential of a future choice by a city council to include an adder fee. Because that's not how this is written. I'm just trying to, but basically a future council could choose to include an adder fee as part of it. That's my intent, however we end up phrasing it, but,
I'll second.
yeah.
okay. And speak to it.
Yeah, just a quick comment. So I think we're making them essentially the same motion that we had made at the prior meeting, because there are a number of amendments that have to be made to the community power plan to outline like the history of it. If you go through there's just a number of sections that just have dates that are changed.
Okay.
And such. But one just clerical question. I know a bunch of those changes were to change it to adopted in February. Do we have to make any clerical changes there, or is this enough of a motion for us to make those marks that it was adopted in March and not February?
No, I think that we're just referring to the draft that was dated February 10th, but the adoption will be the date that you actually adopt it.
So can I revise my motion a little?
Absolutely.
I would move that the community power plan with amendments shown in the draft dated February 10th, 2025 be adopted with revisions as necessary to reflect what we just discussed for option 1.
Second.
So revision of our motions.
The clerk will be calling you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I'm
So we-
confused. Can you go over it once more?
Yeah, so it's basically to just say that we're gonna make the changes to allow for the potential for an adder fee, but the original draft that was dated February 10th showed 3 options. It needs to be revised to show 4 options in the grid shape only. There was like a blank grid.
So,
Okay, never mind, ignore me then, it's fine.
I think you don't need to do that. I mean, you can if you want. But the plan, the draft, the February 10th draft actually shows the 4 options, and then it has language that says that those options can change in the
Okay.
future. That way we don't have to amend the plan every time we change the options.
I'm not sure why I thought there were 3 in the new one, but so then it's fine how it is. And even my motion actually works because
Yeah.
then it says there's no changes needed. So,
Okay?
He's gonna say-
Yeah, I want to get you first. You,
Oh, I didn't
you're
know
set?
that.
All right. Chris?
For the city attorney, why would we have to make a motion to give a future council the opportunity to change it when they have that opportunity anytime they meet?
Thank you.
My understanding is the plan is for it's going to be effective for a number of years. I think it's 5 years. So in order for the city manager to have the ability to bring, to have a fee, if it's ever going to be a possibility, it needs to be decided now while we set that up. But
Okay.
I'll have her correct me if that's wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right. So that motion, adds the language in the plan, which then gets filed at PUC. So then, once the PUC approves our plan, we have an adopted plan. If the next time we go out to bid, the council wants to do the adder fee, we don't have to go back to the PUC with additional language.
Okay, we're just trying to figure why do we have to give future council permission?
Okay? We're good? All in favor? Opposed? 4 to 1. All right. Thank you all.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
That didn't even take that long.
So what'd you have for time?
The over-under was 1 hour, and I'm happy to report that you hit the under, so. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. Last item on your agenda tonight is a resolution requesting funds for the purchase of a sidewalk paver. So back in February, we made a pitch to the MSFI committee to change what has been longstanding city policy, that any repairs to sidewalks over 100 feet in length, asphalt sidewalks over 100 feet in length, we were expected to replace that asphalt with concrete. As a result of that policy, it kind of limited our ability to do needed maintenance on asphalt sidewalks. So we pitched the idea with the MSFI committee, and made it clear that we weren't advocating for a change to city standards. The city standard is still concrete sidewalks with granite curbing. But in order to maintain the inventory of asphalt sidewalks that we have on an interim basis, we asked them to allow us to do asphalt overlays on those. So this is only applicable to sidewalks that are asphalt today, and aren't in the schedule or programmed in the the next 7-year CIP window to be replaced with concrete. We could do overlays internally, meaning with city staff, city equipment, relatively low cost, but be able to provide some needed maintenance work on those. They agreed with that plan. The council endorsed it. One of the things I'd mentioned when I was talking to MSFI is if the council eventually approved that plan, we would be coming forward looking for funding to buy the initial investment in the machinery that we would need. And at the time, we talked about that machine being between $40,000 and $60,000 for that piece of equipment. My staff is a bunch of good Yankees. They went on I don't know if it was Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, but somebody found a used sidewalk paver that was for sale by a landscape company in Hooksett. They went up, took a drive up there one day, took a look at it. It was in good shape, mechanically sound, for only $8,500. So we and here I have to fess up, we've actually already bought this piece of machinery. It was within the city manager's authority, within our own operating budget. So we didn't break any rules, but we have already purchased it. What I'm asking for tonight is the $8,500 that we spent be added to that line item in the budget so we can do the 1,500 linear feet of sidewalk overlay that we had planned to do and what we talked about with MSFI. If the council decides that they don't want to increase that line item by the $8,500, we'll still be able to do some work, just maybe not hit that 1,500 feet that we had hoped to hit this summer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad that we're doing this in-house and that we're buying used. I think that's a good idea. That was actually going to be my first question is, are we buying new or new or used? Since we are buying used, I'd be curious, how old is the paver that we're getting and how easy is it going to be for us to buy replacement parts and do maintenance on it in-house?
Yeah, I believe it's a 2014 make was what I was told. It's a pretty simple machine. Really, the only part, if you will, the component that would probably require maintenance is a small gasoline engine, and that's something that we could just swap out one engine for another engine if need be. I will put in a plug for our fleet maintenance team. Those guys are really very talented. They can fabricate pieces if they can't buy replacement parts. They can do pretty impressive stuff. So I'm not concerned about our ability to maintain it.
I thought you were going to tell me you used your impact card and we were all set.
I don't think my purchase card has that kind of limit, and nor do I want it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, could this be used to I know it's not in line with our standard, and I'm not suggesting we violate our standard at this point, but I'm curious if it could be used to lay out a new sidewalk. Or if it is not that kind, it's meant to do overlays.
It's meant for asphalt.
That's, I'm aligned, but could it do a new asphalt sidewalk if we?
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think about the folks that came out with concerns about the safety of getting from Hurricane Road to Wildwood, and whether it could be used to solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it can do, it can lay asphalt, basically. We already have the roller, compactor that we'll use. That's already in our inventory, so there's nothing to buy there. So really, the only machine that we needed was the asphalt spreader.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of the largest neighborhoods of houses that has no access by sidewalk at this point, and it's close to a school. So people could walk, but there's no safe way to do it. So it's one that makes me concerned. They brought it up before. I had a constituent remind me of it when I was voting for a school board this week, so.
Anything else? Who's got the motion?
I can do it. Move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R 2025-07.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay.
I just want to go back to an earlier item on the agenda related to parking and say while the report out might not have been completely satisfactory to everyone, it is a work in progress.
And just, if I can respond, I did not mean to, and I realized after I said it that it could have come across very negative, and I didn't intend it to be fully, probably as rough as it was. I'm not a fan of what our response was. I'll be blunt about that. But I know there was a ton of work going into pulling that together, and I do not mean to diminish the work that went into figuring out how to respond to that and pulling that all together. My frustration is just that, like, if they think there's a problem and our response is it's fine, that's not my best response. I know that there's a ton of work, and we have done a lot in the city to make those things safer and more comfortable for folks, but I just, thank you.
We're adjourned.